Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take complex topics, break them down, and give you the essential knowledge, maybe some surprising insights too. Today, we're plunging into the life of someone whose name alone brings up images of power, talent, and yeah, a lot of controversy, Mike Tyson.
Indeed. And his story, it's really so much more complex than just, the knockout highlights. We'll look at his incredible rise coming from almost nothing, his dramatic falls, and the really surprising kind of multifaceted life he's built outside the ring. Our goal today, really, is to understand the person behind all those headlines, tracing that journey from Brooklyn streets to being this global icon.
Right. And you've given us some fascinating material to work with. Our mission here is to pull out those most impactful moments for you, from his early struggles, the things that really shaped him, all the way to, coming back to the ring decades later. Think of this as your shortcut to being genuinely clued in about Iron Mike. So, let's jump in.
Okay, let's unpack where it all started, the genesis of this champion. Mike Tyson's early life, it was incredibly tough. Born in Brooklyn, then severe money problems, forced to move to Brownsville, which back then was known for high crime. Can you give us a more vivid sense of his childhood?
Absolutely. It wasn't just tumultuous, it was a constant fight for survival, for dignity. He often talked about his earliest memories involving conflict. Famously, his first actual fight wasn't boxing, it was on the street over someone pulling the head off one of his pigeons. He loved those pigeons.
Wow. And that incident, as simple as it sounds, it kind of sums up the environment. Violence was the quick answer to disrespect. By 13, he'd been arrested, 38 times? Petty stuff, muggings, fighting. And a lot of those fights, apparently, were because people made fun of his high-pitched voice and his lisp. So it was in that cycle, specifically in a juvenile detention center, the Tryon School for Boys, that someone finally spotted his raw boxing talent. A counselor, former boxer Bobby Stewart.
And here's where it gets really interesting, right? Because that discovery led him straight to the legendary trainer Cus D'Amato. How crucial was D'Amato, especially given how vulnerable Tyson was personally at that point?
Oh, Pivotal doesn't even cover it.
Yeah.
D'Amato wasn't just a trainer. He became this huge figure in Tyson's life, a surrogate father almost. He even took legal guardianship after Tyson's mother died when Mike was just 16. Tyson talked later about, never really knowing his mother beyond being this wild kid, bringing home stolen clothes. He said it was crushing emotionally.
Yeah, that's rough.
D'Amato stepped right into that void, gave him structure, discipline, belief, things he hadn't really had before. Cus wasn't just teaching him how to punch. He was basically rebuilding his whole mindset. He instilled this unique philosophy, controlled aggression, disguised attacks, he called it, that shaped the famous peekaboo style.
A high guard, constant head movement.
Exactly, to slip punches, get inside on taller guys, turning defense straight into explosive offense. And his offense, that crouch he used, gave him immense leverage, power, devastating even up close. It was like a total transformation, mental and physical.
And that transformation, that technique, it paid off incredibly fast in the amateurs. Even before he turned pro at just 18, what were those early signs in his pro career that just screamed phenomenon?
Well, he didn't just start his pro career, he exploded onto the scene, like a force of nature. Guys were just losing. They were getting, demolished. He won his first 19 pro fights by knockout.
19.
Yeah. And get this, 12 of those were in the first round.
Wow.
It wasn't just winning, it was a spectacle. Raw, intimidating power. That's how he got nicknames like Kid Dynamite and Iron Mike. His fights were short, brutal, totally captivating. That signature combo, the right hook to the body, then that lightning right uppercut.
Unforgettable.
It wasn't just power, it was smart. The body shot pulled the guard down, bam, the uppercut landed before they knew what hit them. Calculated destruction.
And with that kind of power, it felt almost inevitable. He grabbed his first world title super young, younger than almost anyone, put his name in the history books right away.
Precisely. November 22, 1986, he's just 20 years, 4 months, 22 days old, youngest heavyweight champ ever, beating Trevor Berbick.
But he didn't stop there. He just systematically went on to unify the WBA, WBC, and IBF titles, one after the other. Became the first heavyweight ever to hold all three belts at the same time. Just unprecedented dominance.
Okay, undisputed champ. And the absolute high point of that reign, the moment lots of boxing people still point to as his peak, that was the Michael Spinks fight, wasn't it? Oh, without a doubt. 1988. Spinks was undefeated, Olympic gold medalist, former champ himself. The fight lasted 91 seconds. 91. Tyson knocked him out, and that just cemented him. Not just a champ, an icon.
91 seconds.
Yeah. And that victory, it wasn't just sports news, it was a cultural event. Millions watched. That's the era when his fame went way beyond boxing. Remember Mike Tyson's Punch-Out on Nintendo?
Oh, yeah. He was the final boss. Terrifying.
Right. It just showed his cultural impact, his mystique. He really was, the baddest man on the planet, an unstoppable force, it seemed.
So you're at this incredible peak, this unprecedented level. What happens then? Because, well, we know his personal life started to unravel very publicly.
Yeah, and what's fascinating and kind of tragic is how fast that external chaos started to, well, chip away at that invincible image. His marriage to actress Robin Givens became this huge media circus, all playing out in public interviews, tabloids.
I remember that Barbara Walters interview.
Exactly. With Givens describing life with Tyson as torture, pure hell,
Yeah.
alleging abuse, it was huge. That very public split, plus these bitter fights over his contract with his manager Bill Caton, and then firing his longtime trainer Kevin Rooney. It all seemed to line up with a noticeable change in the ring. Boxing critics started saying, less head movement, fewer combinations. The sheer ferocity wasn't quite the same. That discipline D'Amato had built seemed to be eroding under all the personal pressure.
And all that chaos, that unraveling, it seemed to hit a breaking point with one of boxing's biggest ever upsets.
Absolutely. February 1990, Tokyo, he fights Buster Douglas. Tyson was a massive 42-1 favorite. Should have been easy, but Douglas knocks him out, wins the undisputed championship. First time Tyson had ever even been knocked down professionally.
Shook the whole sports world.
Completely. Just total shock. This supposedly unbeatable fighter looked vulnerable. But interestingly, Tyson said later that losing to Douglas was maybe the greatest moment of his career. Said he needed that fight to make me a better person and fighter.
A rare bit of self-reflection, maybe.
Perhaps. But just as everyone was processing that loss, his life took an even darker, more drastic turn outside the ring. Changed everything.
Right, the conviction.
Yeah, it raises this huge question. How do you come back from that? 1992, convicted of rape, sentenced to 6 years, served 3. Now, he always maintained his innocence, and his lawyers filed appeals, though they failed. The trial itself was a media frenzy. You had Desiree Washington's testimony that he forced himself on her, Tyson claiming it was consensual, conflicting accounts.
He was everywhere.
There was testimony from a chauffeur supporting Washington's claim of being in shock, and medical testimony consistent with rape. Tyson's own defense strategy was criticized, even by him later. It completely polarized people, changed his public image forever. But then, despite all that, his comeback in 95.
Unbelievable anticipation.
Huge. Marketed with just, he's back. Smashed pay-per-view records. And he quickly won back the WBA and WBC titles. Joined a really small group of guys who'd regained the heavyweight title after losing it. Showed his power was still there, even after prison.
But the controversies just kept coming, didn't they? Leading to maybe the single most infamous, bizarre moment in his whole career.
You must mean the second Holyfield fight, 1997. The Sound of the Fury.
The bite fight.
Exactly. Still one of the most talked about, controversial moments in modern sports. Tyson kept complaining about Holyfield headbutting him, said they weren't being penalized. Then, shockingly, third round, he bites Holyfield on both ears. Actually took a piece out of his right ear, found it on the canvas later.
Just incredible.
He claimed it was retaliation for the headbutts, but the result, disqualified. Boxing license revoked by Nevada, fined $3 million, though he did get the license back eventually. Just a moment of shocking, self-destructive rage that really scarred his career.
So after the bite, more legal troubles followed. Drug possession, DUI. What happened to the baddest man on the planet financially, personally? It's such a contrast to those early days.
It's really kind of staggering. Despite earning, over $30 million for some fights, maybe $300 million total over his career.
Huge money.
Huge. He filed for bankruptcy in 2003. Said he's about $23 million in debt, just blown through it. Lavish spending, bad management, legal fees piling up. And personally, he was struggling badly. He admitted later to serious problems with alcohol, drug addiction. He even revealed in his autobiography, Undisputed Truth, this shocking detail about using his wife's and baby's urine to pass doping tests. Shows you the desperate place he was in.
Wow. Just wow. His last pro loss was in 2005 against Kevin McBride. Said he'd lost his passion then. But his public presence, it didn't fade. If anything, it feels like it's grown since he stopped boxing professionally. How do you explain that, his ability to reinvent himself?
That reinvention is maybe one of the most fascinating parts of his whole story. He didn't just disappear. He didn't just show up in movies. He crafted this whole new public persona. Remember his cameos in The Hangover?
Hilarious.
Right. Showed this surprising self-awareness, willing to poke fun at his own image. Then he did It Man 3. And that one-man Broadway show, Undisputed Truth, critically acclaimed. He just laid his whole life out there, vulnerably.
Yeah, I heard that was powerful.
And voicing that cartoon version of himself in Mike Tyson Mysteries, it wasn't just about staying relevant. It felt like he was taking control of his own story, finding new ways to express himself. Plus, he started the Mike Tyson Cares Foundation for kids from broken homes. His Legends Only League gave retired athletes a platform. That's where his big exhibition fight with Roy Jones Jr. came from.
Right, that was huge too. So he leveraged his fame, but differently.
Exactly.
And he seems to have really leaned into this media personality thing. He's got his own successful podcast now. And then just recently, bam, headlines again, another completely unexpected return to the ring.
Yeah, that's right. November 2024. He's 58 years old, steps back into a professional boxing ring against Jake Paul, this social media guy. Paul won by decision, but the event itself, massive. Became the biggest boxing gate in U.S. history outside Vegas.
Still a huge draw. Incredible.
It shows this almost inexplicable drawing power he still has,
Yeah.
decades past his prime. And his life outside the ring keeps showing these different sides, too, like his lifelong love for pigeons, tending them quietly out in Paradise Valley, a huge contrast to the ring persona.
Yeah, the pigeon thing is fascinating.
His conversion to Islam, performing the Umrah pilgrimage, that suggests a spiritual journey, even his political endorsements, and then having to clarify things, like that fundraiser issue where he said he was unaware and supports peace as a Muslim. It just shows he's still this complex figure navigating intense public attention.
So after this incredible, wild, totally unique journey, what's his ultimate legacy in boxing and just beyond? What does it all tell us?
Well, in boxing, he's undeniably seen as one of the all-time greats in the heavyweight division. Multiple Hall of Fame inductions, including the International Boxing Hall of Fame. The Ring magazine named him Fighter of the Year twice. You remember him for that ferocious, explosive style, pure, intimidating power that just changed the game for a while. His whole look, the black trunks, no socks, the white towel instead of a robe, that pacing before the bell.
Yeah.
It all built this unmatched aura.
Yeah, the intimidation factor was off the charts.
Absolutely. His career, even though the absolute peak was maybe relatively short, it was defined by that knockout power. But his legacy, it really does stretch way beyond boxing now. His cultural impact from video games to movies, TV, Broadway, his podcast, you can't ignore it. He's become this figure who really embodies both the absolute heights of athletic achievement and, well, the deep complexities of human struggle, failure, and reinvention.
What an absolutely extraordinary journey, from that troubled kid in Brooklyn to the undisputed heavyweight champion, then through prison, bankruptcy, and now this surprising reemergence. A media personality, an entrepreneur, and yeah, a pro boxer again at 58.
Tyson's story is just such a powerful reminder that lives are rarely straightforward. And the stories we tell about public figures, often way too simple. His ability to command attention, whether it was through dominance or controversy, it's made him this undeniable force, constantly evolving, constantly defying expectations.
It really leaves you wondering, doesn't it? Given that incredible capacity for reinvention, his enduring, almost magnetic public presence, what else could Mike Tyson possibly have in store for us? And what does his story ultimately tell us about things like redemption, about how public perception can build you up and tear you down, and maybe about that extraordinary human ability to get a second chance? Or a third, or a fourth. Something to think about as you reflect on this deep dive.